Assalamu alaikum viewers, Profit की इस हफ्ते की कवर स्टोरी द बिग शॉर्ट इनसाइड द एक्सचेंज रेट volatility in Pakistan is by our editor Khurram Hussain Saab and sector analyst for the central bank Ariba Shahid. Ariba is with us today. Ariba, could you tell us a bit about the story and what has happened since in the currency market?
The last week was really crazy at work because every day we were getting new updates about what's happening in the interbank. So the whole week, Khurram Saab and I spent together talking to people all around. And we titled the story The Big Short, and inside the exchange rate volatility in Pakistan. And the reason we titled this is that unlike the movie, the difference is that the banking sector is shorting the dollar, not because it thinks it's the bubble or whatever. It's just shorting the dollar because of the fact that the state bank's been telling it to. So right. The state bank has been asking banks. We've Profits covered this exclusively as well, as and when this happened. So there was a confidential meeting with the treasurers of multiple banks, where the state bank has asked different commercial banks in Pakistan to keep the exchange rate low, even if it means incurring losses. So essentially what happens is the banks, what they were doing is that they were selling the dollars and they were keeping short positions just to keep the dollar low. And then later on, when they would need to make a payment, they would go into the interbank and probably buy at higher rates. The build up to this story has been very crazy in the sense that over the past few weeks, banks, what they were doing is they had to manage their inflows and outflows. So if a bank wanted to process an LC of, let's say, so and so amount, it needed to make sure it had an inflow of so and so amount. And if they didn't, they would have to go into the interbank and buy. But since the state bank hasn't been really selling in the interbank, there is a liquidity crunch. And again, Profit has talked about the liquidity crunch in detail as well. In the past, we reported on the forward premiums moving towards discount. And then we also reported on the change in the SCLR, which increased bank liquidity, and then it brought the discounts back to a premium. But there is a dollar crunch in the interbank, and as a result, the LCs are still facing trouble being processed. And your question was, is that what change has happened since the cover story? So the story was out on Monday, and you and I are speaking today on Thursday. There is still a liquidity crunch going on. LCs are still processed slow. Administrative delays are still happening. Banks are still turning away LCs, and the charges that the dollar rate that they're being given is around 240-ish, like it was before as well. Right. The rupee has been losing value, but like yesterday, the Fed increased the interest rate. So as a result, the dollar strengthened. So today's weakness might primarily also be because of that.
So you talk about the administrative restrictions being placed by the SPP. So my question is, how is that affecting clients in terms of getting their LCs retired, and how difficult is it to open LCs right now? And you also touch upon how foreign banks are reacting to Pakistani banks at the moment. So could you just elaborate on that as well?
So when we talk about the LCs being retired, so because of the liquidity crunch, what's happening is that LCs are being retired at a really high rate compared to the interbank rate. So that is one thing that's happening. New LCs are having trouble opening. So at this moment, LCs for essential goods are primarily being processed. So even though the import ban is being lifted, we will only be seeing LCs for essential goods being processed on a priority until we see the liquidity crunch reducing. So until we don't get significant FX reserves, this will happen. As for the foreign banks, this issue is primarily seen in the petroleum industry, where foreign banks are showing mistrust towards Pakistani banks, LCs. There are multiple reasons for this. One is they're considering the worsening macroeconomic situation. The other is that maybe their exposure towards Pakistan is at a high. So we need to keep both those things into account. But as far as the foreign banks are concerned, they're asking for a guarantor to guarantee an LC. So if, let's say, a Pakistani bank, let's say Bank A, gets an LC the foreign bank, the supplier's bank, let's say Bank B, will require a third bank, Bank C, to guarantee the LC. And what happens is, as a result, because Bank C is also going to charge for its services, before it would charge somewhat less than like 1.5%. But now the charges have also gone up to 5 to 6% for some suppliers. So this addition, even though it's not charged to Bank A, this addition is obviously going to be charged by the supplier to the customer in some sort of price passing mechanism. And as a result, what's happening is that the imports of fuel are also at a little higher price than they would have been. So this is what's happening in terms of how foreign banks are showing some mistrust towards our LCs. But so far, we've only been able to confirm this in the petroleum sector.
Okay, and you mentioned that last month there was around $700 million of oil payments that were made by Pakistan. And you also say that if such lumpy payments, as you say it, won't be seen in the future, will that bring some sort of ease in the market, or will it not?
Yes, because with the imports coming down, because the price increase of fuel has had an impact. These lumpy payments, like so the fact that these payments will not be there in the next few weeks and next few months would also bring down some of the pressure on the interbank to meet these payments. But honestly, I feel that there was one payment last week of 70 million. If the market can crash over 70 million payment, that means that there are a lot of big issues in the market.
Right, of course. And so in terms of the IMF, everyone is looking towards the fund to, sort of inject that $2 billion that has been expected for the last 2 months at least, or ever since this government came in. That is being delayed over and over again. So is that adding to the volatility in the market as well?
Yes, because once the IMF money comes in, our reserves will be bolstered, but then also we'll also get money from friendly countries who are probably waiting for the IMF to show their support as well, or their trust. So until our reserves do not shore up, there will be more volatility in the interbank, and also because of the uncertainty, because of no IMF program at this moment, that will continue. But yes, when the fund sends in the money and it hits our reserves, the situation will drastically improve.
Okay, and in terms of the political insanity that is prevalent in the country as well, a lot of people are saying that is also adding to the exchange rate. But how much of that is based on fundamentals, and how much of it is on the political uncertainty end?
So the US dollar has been strengthening against currencies around the world, especially with its interest rate hikes. So that is one thing that we can't ignore. But on the other hand, the political uncertainty also plays a role, because with political uncertainty, the markets start gushing with rumors on whether the fund program will continue in case this government stays, a caretaker government comes in, or an election happens. So things like this pop up some questions as well. Similarly, there are other issues as well. Like right now, although an acting governor has all the authority except for signing new currency notes, the fact that there is no permanent government, I mean, at this point, there's nothing certain at this point. So that also plays a role. The political environment in the country is certainly one where no one can predict what's going to happen the next day. Like I see political analysts talking on TV, and then I know that for a fact that no one knows what's going to happen. Right. So keeping all that in mind, it does weigh on the currency, especially for a retail investor, but also on the longer term, like larger investors as well. But fundamentally as well, the Pakistani rupee is going to be weakened because one, the dollar is strengthening. Two, our imports are significantly high. Three, our exports haven't been increasing by the same amount. Four, our reserves are depleting and our import cover is less than 1.5 months.
All right. Thank you, Ariba.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.